there gives you a good excuse, and you'll think that everybody will think you're watching us when you're really looking at the pictures, so you'll be good.
All looking at the picture of the other wall.
What I'd like to do is start out with a brief meeting, very brief, and then I'd like to get into some of the history and some of the things that some of you know, a lot of you don't know. So, like I say, right now I'd like to start out with a little bit out of order. I would like to do the pledge first, and then I would like you to remain standing. And we'll do this now so you don't have to stand twice. But like I say, right here in the back corner is the flag. So if you could please stand, please rise. Flag is in the corner. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now remain standing. Look around you. Look at the person that you don't know. Not the person you do know. Look around. Now, what I'd like to do is make this simple, and I'd like to say that anybody who's belonged to our club for the past 5 years, please sit down.
Sit down, huh?
Wait a minute now. Someone stand up.
The other way.
The other. And anybody who's belonged to the club for the last 10 years, please sit down. We're going backwards. Stand up, Paul. Mike Schleicher, stay standing. Carol, stay
We
standing.
gotta sit down. Because we have
Paul, stay standing. Up there, big guy. There you go. It's all right. Okay. Now, anybody who's belonged to the club for the past 15 years,
There you go.
please please be seated. Anybody for the last 20 years, please be seated.
No.
You've been up, stay up, Jerry. Don't you sit down. Anybody who's for the last 25 years has belonged to the club, we'll allow that. Okay, the remaining people are the people that have belonged to this club for 25 to 30 years. Now, anybody who is not an original charter member, please sit down. Okay,
Yeah.
Pat would love to stand if she could.
Yeah, 6.
Pat right here, Pat Shaw, Corky Shaw, Mike Schleicher, Paul Dipple, and Al and Goldie Prey. Those are our founding members that are here tonight. There's a lot of people that are really close that I've known since I've been in the club. I joined probably, I think, in 1991. So I'm in the 25-year club. But like I say, Bob Malley, Dan and Judy King, Jerry and Fran, a lot of these people have been here a long time. And like I say, not that long, but long enough. But like I say, if you could all, go ahead and sit down. I'm sorry for making you stand. But the point of this whole thing was the founding people of this club that we have here today. This is what this club has always been about, is friends and fellowship. And I think that we all can attest to that. I say what I'd like to do right now is have a brief, regular meeting, and what it'll be is Secretary's report from Myron, unless we have a motion on that, and Myron's going to get his notes here and get ready.
I don't have a report from.
Nobody, you ready?
I move we disperse with the neighbors.
Thank you, Courtney, we appreciate it, because we didn't have them anyways. Thank you. Motion by Corky, seconded by Ray Conover. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Makes it a lot easier. Treasurer's report, Daniel.
Good news, I got back.
Good news, the money's all gone.
Talk to Judy.
Okay. Everybody here? Am I close enough to the mic?
Yes.
All right. We do have some funds left. Our balance on April 15th was $5,746.24. Our income for the past month was $920. Our expenses were $904.96. Our income was dues, $200, bus trip payments of $540, prepays on the banquet were $120, and we got $40 towards newsletter ads and $20 from the 50/50. Expenses were a newsletter, we had $163.60. Our P.O. box and some membership expenses, the mailers and the forms and all that I did, that was $184.61. We had truck show ads and printing, $145. Meeting expense of $39.75, and our merchandise costs of $372, I think it was hats. Our balance on April 15th was $5,761.28. Our certificate of deposit balance is $5,009.02. If anybody has any questions on it, CB will answer them.
Okay, the balance is $5,761.28. Is there any questions on that? Could we have a motion on that, please? Move to accept by Dick Deming, seconded by Chuck Fackrell. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Now we have brief correspondences. Next weekend, Sunday, 23rd, is the Rockport Toy Show, sponsored by the Two Cylinder Club, who we're very close with. These guys in the back right over here next to the kitchen, outside of Big John. They're trying to get rid of him. But they belong to the Two Cylinder Club, and they've been very active. Last weekend we got a chance to go to their banquet and so on. But like I say, support those guys. It's always a good time. Hopefully we'll have a couple of trucks in there. Phil Picorni, one of our former members, great members, used to bring his little truck and we put it in there and we drew a lot of people. And we passed out a lot of information, and as long as we don't plug in Jim Dool's computer to my battery pack, we'll be good.
Thank you.
So anyways, that is next weekend. The following weekend, on the 30th, which is a Saturday, will be our annual bus trip. This year, we're starting out in Buffalo, Jim's Truck Stop, Kmart Plaza. We'll be starting out there at 6 a.m., Batavia at 7 a.m., exit 48. Kmart Plaza again, corner of on Park Road. And at 7:30 a.m., we will be at Hydroacoustics in Rochester, exit 46 on the thruway, right in front of Monroe Tractor. We'll be leaving from there. If we can get to all these places 15 minutes early, be there. Because if we have everybody there that's signed up to be there, we'll leave early. We're going to go to, everybody knows, we're going to Chuck Nelson's. We're going to the Canal Museum in Syracuse. And I talked to the fellas in Weedsport. I know it was up in the air whether we'd be able to make it to Weedsport or not. But the problem is we have to make a reservation if we intend to go there. And in the Weedsport Hall of Fame, the Stock Car Hall of Fame, the Turner Brothers cars are in there. Doug Federley's got some memorabilia in there. And it's all about the Stock Car Hall of Fame. A lot of the local guys, a lot of you guys that remember the War Memorial in Buffalo, Monroe County, a lot of the places where they used to race years ago, those are all in that museum. It's pretty interesting. So we're gonna book that in, and hopefully at the end of the afternoon we're gonna be able to catch that. It's I told them probably 3 or 3:30 we'd be there. I think we can make it with no problem. It's on our way back. It's not out of our way. And then we'll eat at the Iron Skillet Restaurant, exit 41.
Bring a lunch. Bring a lunch.
Yes, bring a lunch, like Dan says, bring a lunch. I'm having a rain fade on exit 41 is at
Waterloo.
Waterloo. Thank you. That was what I was looking for, Waterloo. Okay. Like I say, those things there are up and coming events. Also, if you looked in the newsletter, you saw that on June 11th, Tones Garage down in Penn Yan is having a get-together. That is, we're all welcome to that. Martin Tones was a big supporter of ours. He's failing a little bit. He's still out and about. He's living with Bud now. Bud's his son. You guys all know Bud, Martin Jr., or young Martin, I should say, not Junior, but Martin.
Martin E. and Martin A.
Yeah, Martin E. and Martin A. And neither of which I am. Those guys there, like I say, they're looking forward to having us down there. They invited us. The Tractor Club will be there. The Tractor Pull Club will be there. The Tabletop Tractor Pullers, guys we had at our show way back. I think it was the last show we were at the Fairgrounds in Batavia. So it'll be a little different. Hit and Miss Engine guys will be there. Quite a few different people will be there. So if anybody gets a chance to go along with us, if you could give us a call. Hopefully we'll meet somewhere for breakfast. If we get enough interest, we'll stop somewhere for breakfast on the way. Mike says he's gonna fire up his 61 Scout, which he just got. He's really excited to see if it goes that fast.
Far.
Anyways, those are up and coming events. Now I'd like to move on to old business. Just briefly, I'd like Al Prane to come up here, talk briefly about the election, which will be next month, and he'll tell you a little more about it. Al?
Won't take long, because we don't have that many guys. As you know, we've been advertising to get some guys to fill in somebody's spot. We've been blessed with good leadership recently. And if you're at all interested in filling any of these spots, please let me know. I've got these gentlemen. George said he will run again for president. Thank you. Myron said he'd like to move up to run for vice president. I'm thankful for that. And Dan says he's still going to watch the money. He's been doing a pretty good job of that. We got more than we had when he started doing it, so I think we're going to keep him running that run. And Paul said he would become our secretary, Paul Torrey. And the stuff he puts in our newsletter, I'd say he's certainly qualified to be a secretary. And we got Bob Thompson said he'd be on the board of trustees. Mark said he would be on the board, and another Mark said he'd be on the board. So we have enough, but we'd still like to give some of these guys some competition. If you'd like to do it, call me. If you don't, we're going to probably have a secretary cast one vote in the May meeting. So don't be bashful about stepping out, but we do have good leadership. Thank you.
Okay, what he was saying there was Mark Ledke would be a new person to the board. Mark McCarrick is on the board now, up for re-election, and Bob Thompson is on the board now, up for re-election. And like I say, these people are, any position is open at the May meeting next month. We don't want to get into that tonight, but in next month, If there's no other candidates, we'll cast one ballot. If there is candidates, we will have ballots available for individual positions as necessary. And Dick and Al are handling that. Corky's also with them. We thank all you guys for being on our election committee this year. And we appreciate, if anybody's interested, they're welcome to bend for any spot. So, now I'd like to just briefly introduce the current slate of officers that we have at this time. And right now, as most of you know, or all you know, I'm George Purcell. I'm the president. I'm sorry. Really sorry.
I wasn't gonna say anything.
Richard Emerling is not here tonight. Rich is our vice president right now. He's in Florida. Recovered this winter, doing pretty well. But like I say, he's going to pass as being vice president. Myron Roseman, please stand up. He is our current secretary. And as all you guys know, Myron's been around a long time. He's from St. Catharines, Ontario. He's our only regular Canadian at this time. We've had a few others in the past, but like I say, Myron is the last of the Mohegans. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Oh, and Don Heatherton here, yes, Don Heatherton always rides along to keep him straight. Thank you, Don. Like I say, our treasurer at this time is Dan King. Dan has been the treasurer for many years also. Our board of trustees at this time, Paul Trowbridge is a senior board member. Senior in every way. He's a heck of a good senior, let me tell you. He's level-headed and he knows what he's doing, and he's a great asset. Bob Thompson. Bob has been with us for several terms now, and Bob is a good man. He's brings a little bit of the corporate world with him that we don't have, which is always good. The third person on the board at this time is Mark McCarrick. Mark McCarrick is also our newsletter editor, and he is our third person on the board. Like I say, at this time, those are our current officers as we speak. This may change next month. We'll see what happens, and we appreciate all that all of you guys have done to make this a better organization. Thank you. Now, if we could, what we're going to do is, when we get done with this presentation, you guys are bored silly, you can go home, but when you go home, we'd ask you to take a copy of the book that we brought tonight that goes along with what we're going to talk about. The reason we're not handing it out first is we don't want any corrections or additions before we talk about this. The way it goes is the way it is. If you don't like it, you can write in a formal complaint later. So if Dan would come up here, and Myron, do you want to come up now or do you want to wait?
I'll wait till Dan's here.
Okay. All right, we'll have Dan start out here, and Dan will be giving us, as long as he wants to talk, unfortunately and unfortunately, the overlay of the club history. And like I say, how we came to be, how we came about, and what we're about. So go ahead.
Make sure. Okay. About the right? Yep. Like, good distance, okay. Put this little thing together. I'm sure there's some mistakes. I always put a couple in anyway, just for reference, so somebody has something to do. Certainly not all inclusive. Meant to bring some people that haven't been as long as some of us old farts have been here, where we came from, who actually who the officers were, and it goes through us, but I've certainly missed some things. We came about, as I understand it, and if there's corrections, we can certainly do that. So the seeds of organization were planted in March of 1985, when a notice from Gordon Rawson, Herman Sass, and Jerry Snyder was circulated inviting people with an interest in forming a Western New York chapter of the American Truck Historical Society to a meeting hosted by Art Isabel. Art was the president of Lake Erie International Dealership, located on Walden Avenue, Cheektowaga. Approximately 70 people attended the meeting with Gordon, Herman, and Tom Evans from the newly formed Twin Tiers chapter addressed the assembly. The organization was formally organized in 1986, and originally only a few regular meetings were held the first year. Some of those were on Sunday afternoons at a local tavern. Around 1988, we started having meetings at the Orchard Park Library. I think Dick Damer may have set that up. Would that be correct, probably? Dick Damer probably started those at the Orchard Park Library. I'm kind of trying to remember some of the things that I... But we continued our winter meetings at the Orchard Park location until 2009. Let's see, in the mid-1990s, we started having our summer meetings at various points of interest in the area. January of 2009, we severed our ties to the ATHS and became the Empire State Antique Truck Association, and we moved our regular meetings to Quickville and Marilla, New York. You get that?
Okay. Is that, are you done with that part?
That little part, I think, part next week's
Yeah. Okay, the next thing I would like to discuss briefly is the officers of the past, officers over the years. Like I say, listen up. Some of the names you may recognize, or maybe not know them, and other ones you will probably know. Myron?
Starting in 1986, the president was Gord Rawson, one of the charter members, along with vice president, secretary, and treasurer was Herman Sass. 87 was almost a carbon copy. Gord again was president. We had Corey Pills as vice president, Paul Denhart as secretary, Fred Killian, which you should know that name, was treasurer. And then we had a few board members as well. 1988, Gord Rawson was president again. Vice president, Leo Wagner, come into the scene. Again, Fred Killian served as treasurer for another year, and secretary was James Warnick. Leo succeeded Gord after 3 years as president in 1989, and vice president was Bruce Schwergert. Bruce was very active there through those years and kind of faded away a bit. James Warnick was secretary again. Corky Shaw came in 1989 as treasurer, and board members were Paul Dippold and Dick Dahmer. 1990, Leo remained as president, Bruce remained as vice president. Leo's wife at the time, Karen, became secretary, and Corky Shaw remained as treasurer. Again, board members, which consisted of 2, were Dick Dahmer and Paul Dippold. Corky remained, Corky in 1994, we skip a few years now. George came into the scene as president. Oh, I'm sorry, 1991 was Al Frame. Vice president was Owen Glenn. Pat Shaw, Corky's wife, was secretary. Corky was treasurer. Then we expanded to 3 board members, Paul Kem, Bill Reingold, and Leo Wagner. Then we skip a few years here. In 1994, George came in as president, Owen Glenn vice president, Corky secretary. Corky, being secretary, remained in that position for 10 years before I took over. George, as you know, 1994 coming in as president, what year is it today? George has been in there for 22 years, outstanding. Treasurer in 1994 has been Bill Reingold. Board members were George Galati and Leo Wagner. We have pretty well the same president remaining. We've had Al Prain come back in 1996 as vice president. As you know, Corky remained as secretary, Bill Reingold as treasurer. Board members changed a little bit. George Galati's there, Paul Cam. George again. Oh, we got in 1998, Jerry Kubinek come in as vice president, and Bill Reingold remained as treasurer, and Corky remained as secretary. Then we've got a few new names come in as board members. We had a Coyle Atkinson, active then, and that was 1998, along with Dan King as a board member, and George Reitmeyer, which George now I think resides down in the Carolinas.
South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah, George is in South Carolina.
So now we're into 2000. George still remains president. Vice president is Jerry Kubinek. Secretary is Corky, treasurer Bill Reingold. Board members, we have a Chip Campbell came into the scene. Dan remains there. And Mark's dad, Ron Milcarrick, was an officer, board member in 2000. 2002, we have George, president. Jerry again as vice president. Corky remains as secretary. Bill remains as treasurer. Board members again is Dan King and Ron Milcarrick. 2004, so that's just 12 years ago. George is president. Vice president is Kevin Harnden. New name come on the scene. After 10 years of Corky being secretary, that was my first year, 2004, as secretary. And Dan moved into being the treasurer in 2004. Board members, Jerry became a board member, Phil Picorni and Paul Trowbridge come on the scene in 2004. 2006, George, again leading the presidents of the club. Rich Emmerling come in 2004 as vice president. 2006, I remained as secretary, Dan as treasurer. Kevin moved from a vice president in 2006 to a board member along with Paul Trowbridge and Don Burrows. We're almost up to date here, people. 2008, George is president, no surprise. Rich Emmerling remains second year in vice president. I'm secretary. Dan is treasurer. Board members still consist of Paul, Don Burrows, and Jerry. 2010, George is president. Third year for Rich Emmerling as vice president. Yeah, pretty well. Myron's secretary, Dan's treasurer, remaining board members. 2012, George. Yeah, boy, same thing again. So we start into a period here where we remain in those positions for a while. Newsletter editors. Oh, is it? Oh, all right. Just getting warmed
We're
up.
just getting warmed up. Okay, Dan will give you the newsletter positions.
So there was a lot of people involved, but many of them were involved for a long, long time. Newsletter editors. With communication being the backbone of any organization, we were blessed with 3 dedicated editors in the early years. Dick Damer was first, and he set a very high standard for those that followed. His informative style and keen sense of humor had us all looking for the next issue. What would Stuart Atterbury be up to next month? I don't know if anybody remembers the Stuart Atterbury story.
Still haven't found him.
But it was certainly a play on Trump, where Stuart Atterbury was a fictitious person that occasionally did some strange things. Dick hung in there for 5 long years before his typewriter broke, or maybe his fingers just gave out. Goldie Pram was the next to pick up the pen or the computer. We had the task of getting the word out to all of us as the ATHS National was on fast track to the Radisson Hotel on Genesee Street. It was the Radisson, right?
Yes.
Goldie was able to keep up the pace for 7 years and kept the organization informed, information coming in a timely and interesting format. Dan King assumed the task in the 13th year of his organization and soon became the uninformed local editor when the former managing director of the ATHS had issues with some of his editorials. And says
Most
he,
of them.
well, I suppose at the time. Basically, I enjoyed the challenge and attempt to keep the members informed and somewhat entertained. I kept at it through the organization's 28th year. And I certainly admit that, unlike my predecessors, I missed an issue or two, 3 or 4. In 2015, Mark McCarrick assumed the editor's position and has kept us all informed and up to date, making it his own by adding information to his own experience and informational resources.
Okay, moving on, I'd like to just cover briefly our truck shows over the years. We've had a lot of locations, a lot of great people, and where are all those trucks? We sure would like to know. So Myron will give you a little history of that, please.
The first 2 truck shows were held in 1987 and 88 at the Sorrento Cheese Lot in Walden Avenue, which is adjoining the Kmart, and I think the Burlington Coat Factory might occupy that end of the mall right now. I didn't attend, but I heard about them. Being on the Canadian side at the time, we were trying to get our own antique truck society going in the 80s and 90s, which I served different different positions on that club. So I wasn't too active on this side, but we sure heard that show at the Sorrento Cheese was certainly a success and was well attended as well. In 88, 89 and 90, the show was moved to around the corner to the Apple Tree Mall, Kmart parking lot. Oh. Is the Apple Tree Mall adjoining? Yeah, could be. Okay. Yeah, that was the one around the corner. I attended one with the Godfredson truck actually, and I think a weekend or 2 before, I was out to a meet with the Godfredson, and it overheated, so it loosened everything up. So when I brought it over on a float to the show there, the gentleman pointed out, he said, looks like chocolate milk coming out of your oil pan or something dripping from under your engine. So everything that had loosened up, all the antifreeze went down into the crankcase, and it was so. And there was a chap there from. They've got tank trucks, and he pulled me up. I dropped the truck from the float or lowboy. We put a long rope. Godfredson was lying up to the ramps, and he pulled me with his Packard car up on to the float so I could take it home, because I couldn't drive it, couldn't start it, do anything with it. So very interesting. So 94 was our big year. Well, we remained at the Kmart parking lot as a site for 91, 92, and 93, and then 94 shows. 95. 94 was the national convention for the ATHS, and that was our theme, Shuffle Off to Buffalo. And there was even a trailer painted up that was roaming around western New York and even southern Ontario with that Shuffle Off to Buffalo theme. So that was a big meet. I think I joined the year before. And for the national show, they wanted everybody they could get to help in any capacity. And whether I was on parking duty, it was a windy afternoon, I had a cap on and sunglasses, and my dad walked by me and didn't even know me. I'm on parking duty, Dad. And the fun part about that show was, and Al was president then, we could shift around, like, okay, you've been on parking lot now, maybe somebody else could spell you off or something. And when people would attend the show, and they'd have 2 or 3 antique trucks on their trailers, once we offloaded them, everything had to move to the parking spot as quick as possible. So I had to drive trucks that I've never had experience before, hop in and follow them down and park them, and so I drove a few odd makes that I've only read about. So Al worked very hard in coordinating all of that. And Gord Rawson there, which was a president, as I mentioned earlier, I remember him driving in on probably maybe that was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday show, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday?
Sunday.
And Gord came in with trays of coffee from McDonald's, and he said, I don't know who all is here, but here, you guys are all working, take a break, and here's something for you. And he had, I remember that till this day, so very thoughtful gesture. So Al may be still paying back the favors for what he called on for that show, I'm sure. Boy, this was the biggest national show to date, and very successful at the time. People talked about that for years. Bus tours, we had so much going on at that time, and success. And I got everybody who did help at that show, myself included. We certainly worked hard, but the rewards were far outweighing any of the work that we certainly did. The 10th annual show was 1996. Oh, we moved to the Genesee County Fairgrounds in Batavia. Certainly from then on, I was helping every year along with many of you here. And we were on grass instead of pavement. That was the biggest improvement we could have made. And we even had a few shaded areas I think people fought to get every year so they could sit in the shade trees with their lawn chairs. So that really, pushing us east of Buffalo, expanded our scope, and certainly we went just beyond antique trucks. We moved into farm and construction, antique construction and farm equipment as well to attend the show. And the first Sunday in August always continues to be our show date at the fairgrounds through 2011. 2003, we partnered with other ATHS chapters in New York to host the national show and convention, again at the New York State Fairgrounds in Syracuse. So that chapter there, which is Twin Tiers or what?
No, Syracuse chapter.
Syracuse chapter.
They were the host chapter.
And it rained there, I think, on a Friday night or Saturday morning, so it kept some of us indoors a little bit before we could get out there and have a look. And our president, George Purcell, was on the committee as well and played a great role in the success of that show that year. We had great member participations for this event and many others, and it sure set the standard for future shows. 2005 ATHS show in Auburn, Indiana saw 15 of our members convoy to the show, and with other national members challenge the board at the annual meeting there. Yeah, you could probably expand it on that a bit there, Dan, much more than me or Rita here, in voting in the slate of officers. 2011, we expanded our show to a 2-day event, which we're all part of, and added an antique tractor pull as well, that Paul Trowbridge does very well in looking after that, along with a lot of helpers. And truck slow races on Saturday as well. In 2012, we moved our 2-day show from Batavia to the Fireman's Grounds in Stafford, New York, and has continued at that location. The Stafford location certainly allowed us to provide food sales as part of our show and more usable space for trucks and activities. Charities, do you want to
Dan's gonna do
expand
that
on that? Sure.
Now we'll have Dan go into the charities over the years that we've helped support. These are only a few. It's incomplete, but it's pretty interesting to look at where we've been. Thank you.
I think Mercy Flight was the first charity of choice in our early years, with them benefiting from our show collection until 1994. It's been our practice to donate all the funds from our collection charity jugs. We usually add funds from our treasury to round the amount to the next 100 or more. In '95, we made a donation of $900 to the Orchard Park Library CD room. Camp Good Days Special Times came on board in 1996 as our show flyer charity. Other organizations that have benefited by our donations include HES Home of Our Own and Library several times, New York State Transportation Museum on several occasions, including $1,000 towards their building fund, down at Clarence Museum where Bob Byers' Buffalo truck is maintained, Leroy Historical Society for their transportation exhibit. In total, our total charitable donations for history of our organization struck close to $20,000.
Okay, thank you. Other annual events that we've had over the years, we've had several. Naturally, the Christmas party. They've been at Repa's, Bedell's, the Coachman, Sheridan East, and the Radisson. I don't remember what year it was, but 3 feet of snow. I think it was '95, the year after the National. We had 3 feet of snow. It was at the Radisson, wasn't it? And we did a little skit that year. I can remember radiator soup, load lightener. Corky, I think you did load lightener maybe. Load lightener for in your tires so you could carry more weight. George Reitmeyer was radiator soup. Owen Glenn, I can't remember what Owen did that year. Owen had some trick up his sleeve. Over the years, we've listened to people like Don Bohns, played for us many times over the years, played the piano, played at the National, good friend, good member, had a lot to do with the National in '94. A lot of the graphics, him and the other fellow,
Don.
the Cannonball.
Yeah.
Oh, Don Rogers.
Don Rogers, along with Al and some other people, put in a lot of hard work to produce the first. What these guys were talking about earlier was that truck there, that the trailer that advertised the National Show in '94 was the very first one. And if you've noticed, there's been quite a few since then. That was these guys' brainchild to come up with that. Bob Malley, here tonight. He is one of our longest members, one of our most gracious members, and he's also he had a book that he used to read from that I totally enjoyed, The Grease Pit Poet. And he read us many a dissertation from the Grease Pit Poet. We had a brunch by the Grease Pit Poet, we had Christmas parties by the Grease Pit Poet, we had quite a few from the Grease Pit Poet. And the bull.
enjoyed doing it.
And the bull, that's what I remember most, was the bull. The bull that the Grease Pit Poet was talking about, not any bull that you saw here. But over the years, we've had our annual bus trip. We've had that, I think, our very first one was 2000. At that time, I remember I became president in '94. It was sort of a belated thing. Al finished the National. The guys that were in place already started the National, and we had the election that year, was a month late. Just like it is this year, it's a month late. But we had it a month late that year. I became president, and like I say, I listened to the people at the meetings. Back then, we had our meetings at Orchard Park, where I would say at best 20 people, maybe 25 at the very most. Always the same people. It was a great, great, great group. Leroy Hauk, the Cornies, Prames, Dipples, Rheingolds, Daniel King, Mr. Esquire, the Kubiniks. I mean, it was the same people every month for years. We had a blast. But back then, we started talking about going on a bus trip. These guys always wanted to go on a bus trip, and we never did it. In 2000, we did our first one. That was to the Crawford Museum in Cleveland. Martin Luther King Boulevard in Cleveland. And in 2002, I believe, was our first trip to Tackaberry's. And we had 104 people on that trip. We partnered up with a couple other groups, and we had 104 people on that trip. That was our largest trip ever. 2 buses. We went to Norwich over the years several times. We went to the Henry Ford Museum. We went to Steamtown. We went to Gary Mahan's in New Jersey, who was a big player in the national organization, and one of our probably most gracious guests, or gracious hosts, excuse me, that we ever had. We also went to Tired Iron Museum, Bump Hamilton. Paul remembers Bump well. A lot of guys here remember Bump well. He was a great guy, a great, great gentleman. And Dick Best out in Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio, we went out there. That was in 2012, was it, or 14? 2012. 2012. That year there, Dick Best, I called him up. I invited us to most of these places. They didn't invite us, we invited ourselves. Talked to Dick Best, he said, I'll get back to you. We went out there, there was a gentleman there also that treated us like gold. They made special breakfast roll for us. They made a big fuss about us, and the man passed away several months later. And actually, Jerry's friend right now,
John McFarland.
John McFarland, thank you. All the help, I thank you for all the help. John McFarland, who we went to last year for one of our meetings, just bought one of Dick Best's trucks. Like I say, over the years, we've gone to numerous fantastic places. Our fall drive around, we started the first one, that was, I believe, around 2002 or so.
Somewhere I didn't.
Around 2002, we don't have a date on that, but the first one was to Bill Strobel's, the steam shovel, and to Dave Salway's. Then we went to the Leroy Theater at that time. We rented the theater, we had a dinner that evening, and we had probably one of our most fun drive rounds was our first one. And that was a good time, and we went to the theater that night and we watched They Drive by Night, which was a Humphrey Bogart movie, which was a trucking movie, can you imagine? Also over the years, we've gone like to Penn Yan, to Jensen's, we've gone to Chef's, we've gone to the Pierce Arrow Museum, we've gone to the waterfront, we've gone many, many, many good places because of you people jumping on and joining in. And let me turn the page here and see what else we got to bore you with. Myron is going to get into some of the other events that we've done over the years, some of the brunches. Dan will get into the convoys and some of that there, and we'll go on from there.
George mentioned the movie They Drive by Night with Humphrey Bogart, and George Raft was the driver, kind of the ringleader. Ida Lupino was a very young actress at the time, and the skipper from Gilligan's Island, which was Alan Hale, he played the trucking company owner of the larger operation. But the funniest line in that is they pull into that service station and Humphrey Bogart is sleeping. And I think that truck was a Sterling, open sea cab, and George Raft pulls out, and the gas station attendant comes out and fill her up. Yeah, okay, that's fine. He reaches over and takes a cigarette from that gas attendant because he didn't have any smokes on him. And after he filled him up with gas, he said, you owe me so much. He said, put it on my account. I said, that's the problem with you truckers. You never have any money. Well, things haven't changed much. Other events, brunches. Yes, Dan is right. We seem to be part of an unofficial part of a diners club. We've hosted many brunches over the years, including the Beacon Inn in Jordan Station, Ontario, Canada, which I think I helped or encouraged you to come across that, and I was sicker than a dog in February, and I didn't attend, so what a cop-out, right? The Big Tree Inn in Geneseo, Springbrook Inn in Caledonia, Briarwood Country Club in Hamburg, and the Transit Valley Country Club in Amherst, just to name a few. Convoys to trucking events. Wow. Is that yours?
Yeah,
okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
There's your cue, Dan.
That was mine. We've been travelers. We've traveled together to a lot of places. The Hartford show is one of our early ones. We had 3 or 4 that went, and sometimes there's 5 or 6. That's always an annual event for years and years. Went to several national shows. George probably was in more of those, and probably Corky and some of the other ones than I was, but we had this one in 2005 that was kind of a big one. He had 15 of us that went out there, and I remember George was all pre-planning this one, so Corky and George and I took a drive in George's van, and we went all the way out one day and back.
At
We
40 miles an hour.
Yeah, and it's probably a good thing we did, because we got in the north side of Cleveland, and Paul was going to take his trailer as a backup, right? Well, we got in the north side of Cleveland, we were going to go, was it Route 6 or whatever the heck that was?
Route 6, yeah.
Route 6. Anyway, we got back in there, and all of us right away about the same time said, well, Paul ain't going like this. This is no place to go. So I think we checked out the accommodations, and Corky made some good notes, because it was a good thing, because I needed them. And so we got all the way out and back, and George got a hold of let's see, the GMC guy in Cleveland. Oh, geez, I know him, like, I got a senior moment, sorry,
It's two of us now.
It's,
Dan Reynolds.
Dan Reynolds, and he got us, kind of the map to go, we had to get on the expressway, we went out Route 20, and we had our stops all figured out where we could stop, and
Yeah.
we did pretty good. We got through there and got back on, what was the route again? Was it 6 again? when we got the other side?
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful, straight, big wide 2-lane with very few stops anywhere, which the fire truck really liked those. It was flat, and it was flat. And, so come to go, we all got kind of lined up at the plaza up there at Southwestern Boulevard. We waited. I think we made it for your buddy, Lou. Anyway, finally Lou never showed, so we left without him.
It was almost a mutiny over Lou.
Well,
Mercury pickup.
I'm going.
And,
we need to stick to schedule.
so we got underway and went pretty well. They put me in front because I was really slow. And if I made a light, I just kept going because everybody else could pass me anytime they wanted. If I was in the back, I'd have been there next week after the show was over. So we got rolling and it ran like a champ all the way out and all the way back. We went out in 2 days and came back in 1. That was a long day. But, it was a good adventure. We had a good time, and it was just one of those fun things that everybody enjoyed. And we had some other members, not to limit the attendance, because we had some other people that came out by themselves. That their schedule didn't work the convoy, and some left early, some came a few days later. But we had a good group of people out there. So if you get a chance to go, even a short one, get involved. It's always, usually it's a breakfast thing to start with.
Yes. All right, now, just briefly, some of the picnics we've had. The reason that we're bringing all this stuff up is because the names of the people who were involved with this organization that aren't there today or that moved on some way or another. But like I say, back then, the picnics we had, the first one was Don Farwell's over there on 104. Now there's a museum that never got off the ground. Bob, pay attention. Bob's working on a museum right now. If anybody who wants to volunteer their time.
Rumor. Gotta be more specific when you yell
You gotta be more specific when you yell Bob.
back.
Okay, Owen and Mary Ann, two great people we lost way too soon. They hosted 2 picnics for us. Pat and Corky hosted 2 picnics for us. George and Faith out there in South Wales, thank you, South Wales, that's the name of the place. South Wales, George had a, what was that truck? He had a transport, yes, transport truck, very, very, very rare. On the wheels of time, many years ago. One of the nicest trucks, beautiful truck. Bob and Judy Malley probably had one of the craziest times we ever had down at their house. Bob took us out for a ride. We thought he was going to wipe out that bus with a stop sign. Or wipe out the stop sign with the bus, whichever way it went. We hung on for dear life and crammed and put her through the paces. He had her wound up, boy, I'm telling you.
I was in the back, we were missing them things like that. I mean,
It scared the hell out of you.
yeah.
Another place where we went for many, many times over the years was the Transportation Museum. We used to have more or less an Eastern show, and that was always on Sunday. It was a picnic, it was a club picnic, and it was an unofficial show. And probably one of the best things that ever came out of that one was 32 cents a mile. That was another great time. Bob Wahaska, Paul Dipple, Al Prane, Dan, myself, probably Jim Wahaska. I can't tell you who else was in on it, but I'll tell you what, that was the biggest laugh. If we only had a tape recorder that day, it was worth every minute of it, and we could play it time and time again. But like I say, those are just some of the picnics we had over the years, which were all great time, great places, great people. Now, Myron is gonna go over some of the tours that we had over the years, and then Dan will go over some of the summer meetings that we've had over the years.
How old I am. This just makes me realize how old I am.
As you know, November till April, we're indoors
It's time for me to jump out.
with a lot of guest speakers, get the membership out, talk about how we're planning the summer meets. And from May on, it's great to be outdoors when we have a host spot to go to. Some of the tours that we have toured over the years, the Cummins Engine Plant in Jamestown, New York, the Win-Ross Restoration Shop with Twin Tiers chapter, and visited Young's Fire Equipment, and an oil field tour, John Williams in Allegheny, New York, just to name a few. I do recall that down in the south, and plus much more.
Then when we started the summer travel meetings, I think they've been a great success. We've been able to get out away from our winter meeting place and get some members that are on the fringes. We're always looking for new places, so anybody that's here, if you got a place for a summer meeting, we want to know about it so we can try to get it set up. But we've been to Earl's Drive-In. We went to Dick Moore's in Alba. We've been to Ed Arnold's and Casey's, Transportation Museum, Caledonia Diesel, Clarencetown Museum, Ranch Toys, Southline Fire, Wilson Historical Society. We went to Stiles Bradley down in Pavilion. I think he's got hit and miss engines. There's the Pazda collection, I believe that's right, in Smith Hills. Pazda. Okay. I don't think he's still with us, is he? That was a place he had more vehicles in those parties than I could imagine. He had them in there, and I think there was about that much room between each. I mean, you could barely get in there. He had a lot of stuff there. It was a nice guy. We went to Schroeder's, Grand Island Moose. We went to Country Custard on Walden Avenue. That's out in Walden, Tennessee there. That guy was a member for a while. Had that Dodge tank truck. Drogies, yeah, pumping drogies. We cruised, of course, every year when we had our show at Genesee Fairgrounds. We cruised into their fair. We had our meeting there that month before. We've been to a lot of members, and if I miss anybody, don't feel left out. But my memory is probably not what it was. But we've been to Bob Mallory's, we've been to Phil Corney's, we went to Steve Warner's, we've been to Tom Smith's, Ellen Goldie Pram, Bert Corky Shaw, been to Dick Emerlin's, we've been to Dick Turner's, been to Pat Yankelunas a couple times, we've been to John Schroeder's, Paul and Connie Trowbridge, and many others. We've enjoyed these very much and very much appreciate all that have opened their homes and facilities for us to enjoy.
Don't panic, we're almost done.
Got something really loud.
Okay, is there somebody sleeping? Who's sleeping? Clem, wake up. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Didn't mean to scare the rest of you. Clem, don't do that again. Our extra mile award. Originally, that was what we called the Art Mall Award. Art Mall was our first member of this organization that passed away, and I believe it was in 1990. Art Mall, for you who don't know, Art Mall was Ed Narby's uncle, and today Dan King's truck, the blue truck that Dan King has, the 21 GMC, was Art Mall's truck. And before I forget, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but Dan was talking earlier about summer meetings. Mike Schleicher right here is one of our charter members, I believe, and he is hosting our our June meeting at Shawnee Fire Department in, I want to say Parker, that's
On
not
this
Parker.
Settlement Road, right?
Wheatfield. Sanborn, Wheatfield, it's on Lockport Road in Wheatfield. Is there anybody who doesn't know, we'll get you the information, Mark will put it in the newsletter, but Mike has invited us over there. But like I say, this extra mile award, going back to that, some of the recipients of that extra mile award over the years, we did not give it out every year. There was a time when we had a hard time finding candidates that were qualified to give it out. Now, we probably have candidates, but we've sort of gotten rusty on it. We'll work on that this year. But the extra mile award was given to a person who helped the club out behind the scenes and was not an officer for at least 2 years previously, and or a director. Some of the recipients over the years that we can think of, and like I say, using our collective brain, we came up with Jerry Snyder was probably one of our first. Joyce Dipple was one of our early ones. Pat Shaw over here, Pat Shaw. Corky, wake up, pay attention. Carol Purcell, never heard that name before. Fred Killian, we gave that one year. That was to his son. Very emotional for that poor guy to get that award, but we wanted to give it to Fred. He passed away before we gave it to him, so his son accepted it, and that was also, I remember, that was, I can tell you right now, that was at the Coachman that night, remember? Anybody? The Coachman Party House there on Clarence? Like I say, that was a good party. Owen Glenn, past vice president, great guy, nicknamed Jerry. Poor Jerry can't live it down to this day. Rubber lips. We love you, Jerry. Charlie Walrich, one of our longtime members, still with us. Poor Charlie and Nan are in bad health these days. Bob Kinn moved to Florida. Lost him, I believe, this last year. Bruce Swaggart, like Dan said earlier, used to be quite active, going with us on this coming bus trip. Paul Dippold, right over here. A number of years later, Paul was qualified to receive that. Bill Baron Reingold, he was a recipient of that award. And another one was Phil Picorni, another member who gave a lot of time and effort to everything we did. Built and paid for his own signs and stuff to advertise our show, was in parades, was just a little everywhere. Some of you may remember him for two things, his mini truck and his steamroller, or his roller with the flattened out guy under it, and how he used to take care to plant the flowers and everything around those things and make them look really nice when he did it. But probably the last item that we have is Dan is going to address some of our current members